got to go somewhere, ain't that true? Not a whole lot of time for me or you. Got a whole lot of reasons to be mad, let's not pick one. I live in a room at the top of the stairs, got my windows wide open and nobody cares. And I got no choice but to get right up when the sun comes through. Ain't no man can save me, there ain't no man can enslave me. There ain't no man, a man that can change the shape my soul is in. There ain't nobody here who can cause me pain or raise my fear, cause I got only love to share. If you're looking for truth and proof, you'll find it there. If you're looking for truth and proof, you'll find it there. If you're looking for truth and proof, you'll find it.
Let's get talent into position. Take your wardrobe. Settle, please. Camera ready?
Okay.
Okay, let's roll camera, please.
Speeding.
And playback.
When it's over, that's the time I fall in love again. And when it's over, that's the time you're in my heart again. And when you go, I know it never ends, never ends. All the things that I used to say, all the words that got in the way, all the things that I used to know have gone out the window. All the things that she used to bring, all the songs that she used to sing, all the favorite TV shows have gone out the window. Missing you, I never knew how much you loved me. I'm missing you, I never knew how much you meant to me. I need you. And when you go, I know it never ends, never ends.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm just going to make sure my camera is working just fine. And there we are. Very good. So welcome, everyone. Very happy to have you with us tonight. Welcome to our Building Engineers and K-12 Classrooms virtual conference. You are at the kickoff and keynote. So glad you guys are here with us tonight. I just want to go ahead and get started and start off with some huge thank yous. First of all, I'm Steve Johnson. I'm Assistant Director of Technology here in Moore County Schools. And this could not happen with some great people. And I just want to make sure I give some shout outs to those folks right now. So just some quick thank yous. Our DIFs, which are our technology facilitators here in Moore County. I want to say thanks to them and our entire IT staff. They help and make it happen. Our school board has been greatly supportive of all of our efforts. I want to thank all the presenters. We have 33 sessions we're going to talk about tonight. They've done a great job. Our Moore County School Superintendent, Dr. Bob Grimacy, who you'll hear from here in just a moment, and our entire senior staff. I want to thank the North Carolina Digital Teaching and Learning Department. This is funded through a grant, an Innovation Academy grant through that department, so thank you to them. Of course, Mariah Morris, who we'll also hear from, who is our keynote, which we're excited to bring to you tonight. And of course, all of our Moore County Schools teachers and all educators across North Carolina who are taking risks on behalf of their students. So without further ado, this is what we're going to start off with our kickoff. I'm going to start off with a couple logistics of the conference and kind of how it flows together. I'm going to give you a little quick context of Moore County Schools and our journey through this engineering and design process. Going to announce something, a really great opportunity for Go Open NC. So that is a thing that we're going to announce tonight. And I want to get you guys all in the loop. And then we'll kick off some opening remarks from Dr. Bob, and then Mariah Morris will lead us through the keynote. So real quickly, just to talk a little bit about the conference, this is our first time doing a virtual conference. We've never done it before. We've done several in-person conferences, but this is our first time with a virtual. We're really excited to have you guys here. We've got 33 great sessions that are pre-recorded in Sched. And so the way that that works is they're pre-recorded and they are loaded into YouTube. And there is a release schedule that I want to share with you. I blasted this all out to all the attendees, so hopefully you've already seen this. But the way we're going to do it is we're going to release about a third each day. And so the first third is going to be open at 8 p.m. tonight. So those will be ready to view as soon as the kickoff is over. And then we'll release another third on Tuesday morning, and then another third after that on Wednesday. And so that is the release schedule for the videos in Sched. Speaking of Sched, we're going to put everything in there. So everything in the conference, all the sessions, all the materials, the evaluations, the emails of the presenters are going to be loaded into that Sched session. So if you're not signed into a session, make sure you hit that Sched session. You'll get everything in there. Also, I want to let you know about CEUs. I have had some questions about this. So the way that CEUs will work is you'll watch the session that's pre-recorded in Sched. And in that session, you'll have an evaluation form that is shared with you. If you'll fill that evaluation form out by November the 30th, then the following day, I will email all the certificates out to all the sessions that you attended on the 1st. If you got any questions about sessions or materials, you can direct those to the presenters. Like I say, their emails are loaded into each of those sessions. And if you got questions about the conference itself or the logistics, just send them to me. Again, Steve Johnson, sjohnson@ncmcs.org. And last but not least, I do want to make sure you guys see this. Our hashtag is K12 Engineers. That's a new hashtag that we're using. So please make sure you tweet out, make sure you get connected, tweet with your fellow attendees, tweet with your presenters, and let's get ourselves connected in this great endeavor. All right, so just a quick context of where we're at. This is what our conference looks like the last time we put it on. So things have changed since then. This was 2 springs ago. And what we've typically done is invite educators from across North Carolina into our biggest high school gym. This is Pinecrest High School. At the same time, we're running our elementary robotics competition. And so what you're seeing in this picture is a combination of over 200 educators from North Carolina coming to not only see the robotics competition, but also to get PD on how to get started with engineering and design in their classrooms. And so that's what the conference has typically looked like, with over 350 kids running around, doing the robotics tasks. And so we are really looking forward to getting back to this hands-on, face-to-face environment. It's just a great spot to be. And we will be looking forward to doing that in the fall of next year. So keep that on your radar. I've got your information. I'll make sure you're aware of when we're going to kick that back into gear again, once we get back face-to-face. Now, in Moore County, just to give you a little bit of background on where we are and where we're coming from, robotics was really the snowball that got pushed down the hall, or down the hill down here in Moore County. And so what we did was we started with robotics in all of our 23 schools with after-school clubs, and saw a ton of interest. And basically what we try to figure out is how can we harness that interest in design and engineering with robotics and bring it into our classrooms. And so about 4 years ago, we started the engineering and design process and engineering thread into our curriculum standards in our classrooms in K-5. It was such a huge hit, tied to standards, really engaging work. We had fantastic teacher leaders that jumped in and took a risk, like our very own Mariah Morris, who you'll hear from here in a minute. And it was such a success that we decided that we have to keep going. Once these kids got up into the high school, middle school and high school, we decided we need to make sure we have that change all the way 6 through 12 as well. So in the past 2 years, we've been really focused on not just beefing up our K-5 engineering and design, but also in grades 6 through 12. As an innovation academy in Moore County and for the state, It is our mission now and our grant, it is the purpose of the grant to spread design thinking across the state of North Carolina. And so that is the purpose of our grant, and that's why we're here today, is to help everyone get connected and see just how powerful this type of learning can be. And speaking of spreading the word, I wanted to announce an opportunity we've got. This is the first time we've rolled this out. I will be also sending this information out to all of your emails, but I wanted to announce it tonight. We have a hub in Go Open NC, and that is the link there. You can also just Google Go Open NC, it'll take you right to it. It's a featured hub, so at the top you've got hubs and you'll see featured hubs. And what we're announcing tonight is we have a great opportunity to expand our design thinking hub and our lessons and materials in there. So right now, just for Moore County, we've contributed about 55 or 60 lessons and mini projects in that hub if you go right there. But with grant funds, we are looking to expand that greatly. And so we are looking for you to get involved. So North Carolina educators across the state to contribute and also get paid to do it. And so we're rolling out a process in order to pay folks a stipend of $195 for each approved lesson, up to 3 lessons. Our goal is to have 150 more projects and lessons into that Go Open Hub by the end of the year. This is the interest form. So bit.ly/MCS-Go Open. Of course, that is case sensitive if you guys know bit.ly links. And that is the link that I'll be blasting out to your email, so you can jot it down or just hit your email up whenever I send that email blast out to you at the conclusion of the conference. So really excited about that. Again, the whole purpose is to take design thinking and engineering into all of our K-12 classrooms and really bring that powerful learning to life across the state. So without further ado, that is the information I had for you as part of the kickoff and some of the logistics. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Bob Grimacy, who has recorded some introductory remarks. Typically at our conferences, Dr. Bob comes out and gets the crowd riled up, gets the kids chanting and singing, and I know he loves that, and he wanted to be a part of this tonight. So I'm going to turn it over without any further ado to Dr. Bob.
Good evening. I'm Bob Grimacy, Superintendent of Moore County Schools, and I'm here to welcome you to the 4th Annual Building Engineers in K through Classrooms Virtual Conference. If you don't mind, I'm wearing my chemistry periodic table tie and my lab coat simply because I've gotten in the habit of doing this over the last few years as we've hosted these conferences. As some of you know that have been with us in the past, we normally build this professional development conference around a robotics festival for our students, in which our visitors are able to see our students actually practicing some of the methods that we are using in Moore County schools. And so with that, in the spirit of that, I've always worn a lab coat and tried to do something to add to the event, and gotten a lot of positive feedback from you all in the past. So some of you that have been with us in the past, you'll remember the lab coat. Well, as some of you know, 7 years ago, Moore County Schools offered extracurricular robotics teams for the first time. And we saw the level of engagement and the amount of relevance that our students drew from that experience. And we just couldn't stop there. We saw that our students' engagement with robotics actually inspired them to want to learn science and math and to apply their communication skills that we try to teach in language arts. And so we started to look at ways to work with classroom teachers and our digital integration facilitators to build a series of lessons around engineering that at that time was in K through 5. These lessons were standard-based, and they were intended to integrate math and science and language arts and social studies. With each passing year, we actually found that this spread and our students became more engaged, and our teachers found that it was pretty fun to teach, expanding eventually to 8th grade. And now we're looking to use STEM as strategies that engage minds as a means by which to integrate our curriculum and inspire our students all the way through 12th grade. It's been great to watch our students working in groups, learning to brainstorm and use the design process and testing their ideas and then adapting and improving on those ideas and eventually coming to conclusions, and throughout the whole process, learning to persevere. The 4 C's of critical thinking and collaboration, communication, and creativity are just so abundant. And it's just gratifying to me to see that our teachers are actually rediscovering fun and joy in teaching through some of these strategies. As you know, we've had to adapt to COVID-19 like everybody else, and we've moved away from that very fun event where we celebrated our students in the Robotics Festival. But there's still great benefit, because now it's not just Moore County teachers who are going to be offering you this banquet of great ideas and methods and strategies. It's now a network of teachers throughout North Carolina. And Moore County is very proud to serve as a platform to bring all of these experts together from across our great state in service to our children. Your participation in this conference validates your own devotion to the students of North Carolina. It also validates your understanding that students learn best and retain their knowledge when the strategies that we employ and the curriculum that we offer engages not only their minds, but also their hands, their senses, and most important, their hearts. I want to welcome you back in the future to Moore County so that we can get together again in person. But in the meantime, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Moore County's own 2019 Burroughs Wellcome Fund State North Carolina Teacher of the Year, Ms. Mariah Morris, to kick us off.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Grimacy, for that wonderful welcome. That is a hard act to follow. My name is Mariah Morris, and I am the 2019 Burroughs Wellcome Fund North Carolina Teacher of the Year. And I'm very proud to say that I have returned home after my Teacher of the Year travels to Moore County Schools, and I serve as our Innovation and Special Projects Coordinator. I'm so excited to be here with y'all this evening, to share some of my passion and my journey of adopting STEM education as strategies that engage our students' minds, as well as embodying the engineering thread into my pedagogy and exploring ways to innovate in and outside of the classroom. My presentation tonight is Daring to Dream, Learning to Fail, and Leading to Inspire. And I am excited that you guys will travel along this journey with me, and I hope that you see yourselves and that this presentation pushes you in some capacity to think about how to connect during this wonderful conference. So, as Steve Johnson and Dr. Grimacy both noted, we are in the middle of a global pandemic, which is changing the very nature of this conference. One of the great reasons, in my opinion, to go to conferences is for that ability to network and connect with people, both old friends across the state or where your community, as well as meet new people who share your passion and your excitement for the topic of the conference. And that is one of the sad things about this conference, is that we're not going to be able to necessarily network in that traditional sense. But I would encourage you to take advantage of the ways that you can connect. One is through that hashtag that I have at the bottom of my screen, which is K-12 Engineers. I want to challenge you right now, if you're on Twitter, I want you to post one of the things you're most excited about this conference to K-12 Engineers, and then I want you to share and like someone else and try and connect with someone digitally that you don't know through this hashtag. And I'm not playing, I really want you to do that right now. So go ahead, get that K-12 Engineers hashtag fired up, and go ahead throughout this presentation and share different thoughts that you have as a way to connect with each other. Also, another way that I think would be great to connect is please reach out to the presenters. that you participate in their sessions. They are recording those sessions, but they're very excited to connect with you. So email them, schedule a time to chat, and see if you can post things that you love about those sessions to this hashtag so that you can meet people across the state who share your passions as well. So I want you guys to think about it. Something has drawn you to this conference. Something has drawn you to this keynote at 7 p.m. on a Sunday evening. You know, you got this email that came across your computer screen one day, probably at work, that said, Building Engineers Conference, Moore County Schools. And my guess is that there was something inside of you, something a little deeper than just, oh, this looks like a cool conference, or STEM's fun, this should be interesting, that brought you to this place in time. And my guess is that we all share a new way of thinking about how children learn. We recognize that we might have to do something a little bit different in our schools than we've been doing the last couple generations to meet the needs of our 21st century students. And it might have been that spark that brought you here tonight and is bringing you to the conference throughout the rest of the week. And I want to frame my presentation with this call, the call that brought us all together. And tonight, I want you to think about how we are enabling our children to think across the pre-K through 12 landscape. What types of thinking do we celebrate in our classrooms and in our schools? What type of students do we celebrate? What type of learning succeeds in your classroom, in your school, or in your district? What in our education spaces supports the type of thinking that we want to bring into the forefront in the 21st century? And what in our education spaces is in direct conflict of what we think should be how we celebrate thinking and intelligence in our schools? If you're on Twitter, go ahead and answer one of those questions to that hashtag so that we can get this conversation started, because I by no means am the expert on this. It's really each and every educator and the unique experiences that you bring. And we can't necessarily be interactive through this platform, so let's take it online and start thinking about who do we celebrate in the schools. And I'm going to tell you guys a personal story. And this is part of the reason I'm here in this spot. And some of you might have heard this story before if you know me. But a big part of the reason why I developed a passion and a love for strategies that engage minds, our definition of STEM that we endorse in Moore County Schools, as Dr. Grimacy noted, it's a very personal story that I grew up listening to over and over and seeing present itself in my life very differently. And that's the story of my father, Gene Dillard, who's on this screen. Gene Dillard is known as the Mosaic Man of Durham. People come from all over the country now to see his folk art that he has created in his yard. He likes to laugh that, yes, it is true, there is no HOA in his neighborhood, thank goodness. And he also likes to laugh that when he does one day leave this house to my brother and I, we're going to have a big mess to deal with. But it's also a beautiful illustration of why I'm here, passionate about thinking about how our children think and thinking about what type of intelligence we support and we endorse as educators. Gene Dillard has mosaicked his house into beautiful artwork. He has no blueprint, he has no plans, but he creates structures and he has a creative vision that he brings to life in different pieces of art. He loves the way the light shines through the glass bottles and makes light dance across the different structures in his yard. People come from all over to see this, and he's been written up in very diverse media sources as well as books. This is his Dr. Seuss tree that he loves, that's on the back of his garage, that he always says he thinks Dr. Seuss would have loved, although he is quick to tell you he hated Dr. Seuss because Dr. Seuss actually was really hard to read when he was a child. And the reason he likes to say that is because Gene Dillard struggled as a child. And I grew up seeing that behind this creative genius, there was a human being who had been pretty much beaten down by the education system. He was that boy in your class who is in interventions from the time he starts in kindergarten and goes through high school. He can tell you about having to get pulled out of content area classes and sitting in the classes that he would say were for the kids like him who couldn't read well or read at all. He was held back in 3rd grade. It's that classic story. And I want you to think about the kids in your education spaces, whether you're a teacher, whether you're an administrator, whether you're a district leader, who fit this mold, because Gene Dillard's not alone. He's not unique. I know this story intimately well because it's my father, and I saw the baggage that he carried as an adult. The fact that he barely graduated from high school, barely being able to read. The fact that he wasn't able to go to college and earn a degree, and the fact that he had to support his family with young children on a plumber's salary, making minimum wage. But I also saw what was inside of him, and it was a different type of intelligence and a different type of strength. Because that artwork on the right side of your screen, that's a light well that he created with no plans, that he re-engineered the way his ceiling worked to create this beautiful light. But on the left, that represents the type of equipment that he taught himself to repair when he realized that plumbing wasn't quite gonna cut it raising a family of 4. He taught himself to repair high-tech scientific equipment at Duke and UNC and NC State and NIEHS, and I would run around these labs with him, with the scientists, with their prized possessions, relying on him to make sure that the equipment carried their experiments through. And he taught himself that with no books, with no training, with no community college, with no college, but all because he had that intelligence in him. But yet we have the Gene Dillards of our classroom and the students of our classroom feeling like this child at the bottom, overwhelmed with what we're asking them to do and us not meeting their needs, and somehow that being their fault, and them holding up that help sign, and we don't know what to do but to put them in more interventions that just aren't working. And so my call is, what if? The onus is on us as educators and as people and as grown-ups and as human beings to realize that there's a beautiful diversity of neurodiversity out there, and that we might need to rethink the type of intelligence that we value in our schools. So that we're not trying to fit square pegs through round holes all the time and telling those square pegs that they're wrong because they don't fit the mold. Well, what if the mold is so awesome and so great that we don't even need to be trying to have them fit that? And I want to leave you with this question before I start going through the rest of my presentation, is what is the definition of intelligence that you endorse? And how does that fit into this bigger conference of STEM, education, and the engineering thread? And that is what was inside of me that led me to really believe, hey, there might be something to this STEM stuff. You know, the first time our STEM coach came to me and wanted to do a robot, yeah, I thought it was cool. Yeah, it was cool the way it engaged my students, but there was something deeper inside of me as a person that realized, hey, there might be something here that is meeting my definition of what it means to educate our students. And I bet you that it's the same with you. And so my quest became, how do I transform my classroom to boost engagement and to celebrate my students' strengths so that I could endorse multiple definitions of intelligence and multiple definitions of student identity in my classroom? And that began by daring to dream. Daring to dream about what could be in my class. Maybe it was different than anything I experienced in a college of education, and it was. And maybe it was different than that pacing guide that I was told I needed to teach exactly to the T, and it was. And maybe it was different than that standardized test that told me if my students were proficient or not proficient, or smart or not smart. Maybe the issue was with that test and not so much with where my students were. And I was fortunate to be in this district that supported this type of thinking. As you saw from our superintendent down to the actual classroom level, this is a picture of Miss Ralston, who was our digital integration facilitator that really held my hand through this process and helped me dare to dream. And I know she has some sessions at the conference, so please make sure to seek her out and try to connect with her, because it helped me think about what those 4 C's, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity could be like, while also paying attention to the standards. So here's a lesson that we did together. My students were studying the plot structure in my ELA literacy class. And a lot of times people say, well, how does STEM fit into literacy? Or how does engineering fit into literacy? And here's an example how. We had our students study the traditional literacy standard, and we had them understand the beginning, middle, and end of a story, characterization, main characters, supporting characters, protagonists, antagonists, all of those classic literacy terms, literary terms. But then we took it a step further, and we had students come together in groups, and they had to write their own creative stories where they had to show those standards in action and show that they had mastered those standards by creating their own story. And then once they created their own story, that's when the fun happened. That's when they got to bring those toys from home that you see on the screen. And they got to create stop motion films that showed their stories in action and that they were then able to present to the class. And here I'm going to show you an example of what one of these films looked like. And the reason I have this graphic organizer on the screen, this wasn't necessarily the best work of a second grader in my class. This wasn't the exemplar graphic organizer. But what that graphic organizer represents is a reluctant writer, a writer who did not like literacy. She didn't connect. She didn't like reading. She didn't have the patience to sit down and think through her writing, and it felt very frustrating to her. But you see, she did it. And I don't know if you can see, but the handwriting changes in the middle because her friend had to step in and help her, but they worked together to get it done. And that was because she understood in the context of this project that she was going to engage in this and then bring in this creative element. And boy, did she excel in the creativity department. And let you take a look about this video. So in case you can't follow the second grade plot structure here, there's a group of friends that get together to play with some animals and a soccer ball. But uh-oh, an animal ran away. They call in their help, the Jeep, and say, oh no, help us find our animal. And off they go on their adventure. Lo and behold, they actually need horses, not the Jeep, to help them solve this mystery, because that makes sense in a second grade mind. They hop on their horses. And off they go with some new characters to find their animal. Yay, they find their animal and they give it a carrot, and life is good as they go get ice cream from the ice cream store to celebrate. And so what you see in this is the ability for students to bring in that engineering thread and to bring in strategies that engage minds in non-traditional settings like literacy and writing. Here we have examples of bringing our Dash robot in to help us solve math problems. In each envelope in this math challenge board that my students created, there's actually word problems that my students wrote that showed mastery of the standard. So it's one thing to be able to solve a 3-digit unknown add-in word problem in 2nd grade, but it's a whole nother thing to be able to write a word problem that shows your thinking to do so. And this was an acceleration for my students who had mastered their math content to write these questions for their students. And then my students programmed Dash to solve the questions as they work together. On the right side, you'll see this connected back to literacy, where my students were able to take major events in a story when we were learning cause and effect. And we laid them out, and my students would have to drive Dash to match up the cause and the effect from the different stories that they read, focusing on comprehension. Here we have my students building little robots. These are actually little robots with the We Do robotic program. And on the left side, you'll see it connects to a math lesson where they got to build different animals. They got to program the animals to make sounds and do movements. And then they learned how to ask questions about the animals, tally up the responses from the class, and then to chart it in a bar graph. Here we have the fact that I always love to say that STEM and that engineering thread and digital learning doesn't always have to plug in or turn on. And that's one of my favorite things about bringing STEM into the classroom is not necessarily getting on a screen, but the interaction that comes from bringing those 4 C's to life. Here we study different literacy stories and both fiction and nonfiction texts about gardening. And then we had a farmer from the area come in, and he helped my students plant this very overcrowded plant bed. If you're a gardener, I apologize, full of lettuce and collards and carrots and turnips. And my students got to bring that to life. On the left side, you see this bug, and you would have not believed how excited my students got from seeing a bug, bringing in those real life learning moments where we named this bug, and we were then able to launch into a whole lesson on you know, the insect life cycle and connecting that to the plant life cycle and bringing those science standards to life. Here we have connecting our music standards to creating actual stringed instruments. The picture on the left with the pegboards, my students are creating stringed instruments where they have different weighted fishing line, and they're creating basically a mini violin. The light piece there that the little girl is holding is the bridge that then will create a musical instrument. On the right side, my students have researched a different country to study their weather patterns. They've learned to research on Wise Owl, all about the weather and the climate of this area. And then they're creating maps where they create a green screen presentation, being a weather anchor from this place. And the reason I show you all of that is not to say, ooh, we have so much fun in my classroom, but it's to show you that all of this can and will connect to our standards. And that's something that we're very intentional about in Moore County schools. That's not coming from Mariah Morris, but that's coming from a whole philosophy that engineering and STEM and digital learning and problem-based learning and the 4 C's of 21st century learning are not these extra fun filler activities for when students finish their real learning, but in fact, they're actually on-ramps to learning for those Gene Dillards in your classroom, for those kids that you can probably think of right now, and I challenge you to do so, that just aren't connecting to education. They don't see themselves in the classroom. They don't see themselves learning in the traditional sense, but they have something to offer. And these activities are on-ramps, just like this highway produces many different on-ramps to the highway. These lessons provide on-ramps to our different types of learners. So if an EL learner cannot connect to a text on gardening because the vocabulary is too difficult, maybe she can connect when we actually go outside and get our hands dirty in the garden and we reinforce that vocabulary, right? Or if a student just can't focus on writing because they have attention issues and they just really can't focus on getting a plot structure straight, maybe they can function when they're acting it out with their toy figurines and they're putting it into action. So I challenge us all, and I know I'm talking to kindred spirits, to think this is not extra, this is not enrichment for students who have mastered their grade level content areas, but this is essential for every student to have an on-ramp to your lesson. So after I dared to dream, and I showed you all those examples of the things that worked well, I then had to learn that a big part of this process was in fact learning to fail. Because when you do something different, and you do something that might seem bigger than yourself, you're putting yourself at risk of failing. And that can actually be a beautiful thing. And that's what I had to learn. That when we failed, and you will fail, and I did fail, and anyone who has been in my classroom knows that yes, I did fail in these lessons. It led me to adopt a growth mindset myself. You know that thing we're always preaching to our kids? And we have these cute posters that talk about growth mindset. Well, we as educators, we have to adopt that too and understand that when you're doing something that risks failure, the idea of failing, you're probably doing something worthwhile. And that leads us to that continuous mindset and that continuous improvement, that with the understanding that in order to fail, in order to sail, you have to fail. And your failing is your first attempt in learning, and sailing is your second attempt. And I didn't make that up. That's just a cute poster I saw. And right now, I'd like to present to you Learning to Fail Solar Oven Edition. So our DIFs in our district have created a lesson that we like to do in the classroom about building solar ovens. And in this lesson, our students learn about solar energy, they learn about the engineering thread, they learn about all different ways that the sun works and different ways to heat up s'mores, and it's so much fun. And you can imagine the excitement my students have when they realize that we're gonna create s'mores out of an oven that they create that day. And I mean, the excitement is palpable in the second grade classroom when you tell them that you're going to get to do these things. And we had this huge buildup for a week where we're going to make these solar ovens. And, you know, we had read different things in science. We had done interactive notebooks. We had done all the traditional learning. And then we were going to have this culminating activity of making s'mores. And we made this solar ovens that morning, and it went great. And we put our s'mores in the pizza boxes, and then we put them outside on my sidewalk for them to cook that day. And life was good in Miss Morris's second grade class because we were going to have s'mores at the end of the day, until it wasn't good. Because lo and behold, it was an October day and it was a little bit overcast. And I'm thinking, well, okay, it's okay. We can still have unmelted s'mores. I mean, who doesn't love some chocolate and some marshmallows, right? Great treat before I put the kids on the bus to go home. Notice I was going to put them on the bus to go home, so I wouldn't have to deal with the excitement after the s'more. But we opened up the boxes, and you know what? They were full of ants. And my poor second graders, their spirits just were depleted, right? We had been so excited about this moment. We had built it up, and we just had done a couple things wrong. And apparently all of the ants in Moore County had found my sidewalk that day. And as much as I wanted to tell them ants weren't bad for you and they could eat them, I knew as a teacher I couldn't do that, that I would be putting myself at way too much risk for that one. So we had to throw them away and rethink the game plan. But in doing that, instead of giving up, I realized that I had forgotten a key part of the engineering thread. I had forgotten the part that, to my DIF's credit, Miss Ralston, she had told me to do. We were supposed to go back to the boxes about an hour afterwards and open them up and check on them and make sure they were doing well. And if they weren't cooking, change it up and let the students rethink their design so that they could make it stronger. But I didn't do that part for time reasons. I remember just feeling rushed that day. Had we had completed that step, we would have seen if ants were coming to those boxes, and we could have, you know, sealed them up differently or done something to stop it. And in realizing that I had missed that step and missed teaching my students that step, I was able to own it with them, and I was able to show them why that part of the design process is so important. why it's so important to prototype and then look at your design and then make it stronger. And had I just told them that, it probably wouldn't have stuck with them as much as the fact that they had that disappointment. And we were able to turn that disappointment into a true learning experience and try it again. And Miss Morris also got smart. Notice I put them up on chairs for the second time. So, you know, life was better that day. There was also many times in these Lego projects where, you know, I show you the pictures where kids are smiling. In this case, emojis, they're smiling for the kids' privacy. But, you know, there's also hard times during these lessons. There are times when the robots broke, or there was times when 3 groups needed me and I could only be with 1 group. Or there's times in the 4 C's that collaboration actually turned into frustration. Because students, they hadn't been used to really interacting with each other and they didn't have those problem-solving skills yet. It wasn't a competency that we had built by 2nd grade yet. In all of those moments, there were times where I wanted to give up and I wanted to say I wasn't going to do the lesson again. But I realized that embracing that growth mindset helped my students develop that grit, right? It helped them be able to stick with a problem while it was difficult for an extended amount of time. It helped them realize that there was only one of me and there was only 1 or so of the volunteers there, in this case, a parent volunteer helping, and that they had to learn ways to communicate in authentic capacities. So I wasn't telling them to just turn and talk to their neighbor and calling that collaboration, right? But they were really having to collaborate towards a shared goal of creating a robot that could create frustration if it didn't go well. And that was an authentic learning experience that we had to work through. And as a teacher, I had to start to realize that I had to explicitly teach problem solving to my 2nd graders. And I think part of the reason why learning to fail is so difficult for us as educators is because, you know, we give it our all and we're in it for the children. And it's hard to realize that when things are difficult, it makes us vulnerable. And when we're vulnerable and things might not go well, it sometimes creates shame, right? And I felt that as a teacher in some of those moments of, oh my gosh, my class is falling apart. I have 2 robots that are destroyed, and what can I do? And in those moments you want to give up, but I challenge you to help develop that emotional resiliency, because your students will see it and they will start to gain it. And it's really an amazing thing that at the beginning of my year, I would have to pad my classroom with adults helping me with these robots. And by the end of the year, I could usually do it with just like myself and my diff, because we knew that we had built capacity in our 7- and 8-year-olds for emotional resiliency. And so the last part of my presentation, after you dare to dream and after you learn to embrace this failure, is this sense of, okay, what do you do with that? How do you take that and how do you lead to inspire? Lead to inspire your colleagues and your district and your parents and your students that maybe there's something else in our education system that supports different ways of thinking and supports neurodiversity as a positive. And I want to share with you this quote by actually an economics thinker and leader in our country. Nobody ever made a decision because of a number. They need a story. And isn't that powerful, right? So I would like to think that we're all ambassadors. Everyone on this call who chose to join in tonight is an ambassador for this new way of thinking, for this new way of looking at how we value our students' strengths and how we value intelligence in our education spheres. And we as ambassadors can go out and we can give statistics. We can tell people things like, did you know the World Economic Forum predicts that 65% of our incoming kindergartners will have jobs that have not yet been created? True. And that of those jobs, presumably most of them will be in the tech sector or connected to STEM in some capacity? Also true. We can tell statistics about how STEM is one of the largest economic growth areas of our state. Also true. But those statistics aren't going to change minds. We can show them graphs like these that highlight that computer and mathematical scientists jobs growth is 23.1% higher than all other jobs growth. We can talk to them about how employment in science and engineering is growing at 18.7% nationally and only 14.3% for other occupations. All of that is true, but that's not going to change hearts, and that's not going to change minds. What does change hearts are our stories. It's my story about seeing my father, who as an adult still had shame about things about education, who still got nervous going to my parent conferences when I was a student because he had always been told that he was less than by his teachers. It's connecting with women like this in the IMCS movement who want to move the needle with gender equity in STEM education and computer science and listening to their stories. Their stories about being artificial intelligence lead experts in our state, or being cybersecurity experts, or engineers in our state, and their stories about what it's like to be a female in these workspaces and how they want to empower our girls. It's stories that you carry with you and that each of you have and that you can use to change hearts and change minds if you just dare to lead to inspire our next generation of teachers and students. It's Miss Ralston, who I mentioned, who helped change my heart about how I taught. It's Miss Alderson from Aberdeen Elementary, who's presenting here at a state conference, NC Ties, about standards-based STEM labs. It's Mr. Wolf, one of our favorite diffs who students love and seek out, who's also presenting at NC Ties about how he changes minds. It's people like Miss Sharp, who is a STEM warrior, also an IMCS ambassador, who teaches in a very rural area of Edgecombe County and is empowered and passionate about bringing STEM to Edgecombe County. It's my husband, Mr. Morris, who's presenting to teachers in Boone, in Watauga County in this, about how he integrates STEM and strategies that engage minds into his high school history class, believe it or not. It's Miss Aluke, who in this picture is wearing her IMCS as an ambassador, but she is the CEO and founder of Raising Smart Girls, who is empowering girls to see themselves as engineer by changing the way we present engineering to our young ladies of our classrooms. It's Miss Ellis from Gaston County, who is a Burroughs Wellcome Fund CASMAT awardee, who teaches science in Gaston County at the high school level and is showing her students that yes, they can be scientists just like she can. It's Miss Colazzo and Miss Robledo from Moore County Schools in this game of drones, which is one of their passion areas amongst many, where they're leading across the state and bringing innovative practices to all different types of students in STEM education. It's our current 2020 North Carolina Burroughs Wellcome Fund Teacher of the Year, Miss Stover, who is a science teacher and passionate about bringing science to her students at Fayetteville State University, her first generation college students to be in her early college. It's Miss Priest, who is now in administration and is changing hearts and minds at her elementary schools of what education can look like. It's Dr. Hemphill Joseph, who is the new computer science director at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, who is leading the IMCS movement. And it's our very own Dr. Grimacy, who set out to change our culture in Moore County schools to embody all different ways of learning so that our students could find those on-ramps to learning and that it would trickle down from his philosophy into our classrooms so that every child could feel it. And these are all examples of people who are leading to inspire in their spaces. And I predict that everyone who's connected on this call is leading to inspire in some capacity. And right now on that K-12 Engineers hashtag, I want you to share how you are leading to inspire so that we connect with each other and that I can hear how you're inspiring and other people can as well. Because the idea is that, yes, we can give you a statistic about how girls are underrepresented in STEM professions, but what's really going to change hearts and minds is this group of women who are the IMCS inaugural ambassadors who want to share their stories and make a difference, so that these young girls on the right side in my second grade classroom who are 7 and 8-year-old can see themselves in engineering and robotics. And I always like to say this is personal, because the girl in the purple dress, that's my little girl. And I have 2 girls, and I need them to be able to see themselves in all of these professions. And so as I close tonight, I challenge you, find your call. I know you know it, and I know that's what brought you here tonight. Dare to dream about what education can look like when you really listen to that call. Learn that failure is part of it. And Brene Brown calls on us to not lead with armored leadership, but to have an open heart and an open mind and to embrace that failure. So that's part of our story. And then lead to inspire. And don't be afraid to use your voice, to speak your story and to let it be heard at whatever level you feel comfortable, so that you can help us lead this movement. Because I believe that everyone that's connecting to this conference, that we can be ambassadors across the state that are infiltrating into our spaces to show that learning can and should be different for the 21st century generation. And I just want you to keep in mind that success, everyone always thinks it's a straight line, but it never is. What it really looks like is a whole bunch of mess and blending, and the important thing is that you're still moving forward. And that when you do feel like you're in the middle of that knot, that the important thing is that you go back to your call, because that's what's going to get you through and help you move forward. And so in closing, I hope to connect with you. I'm going to check out all of these K-12 engineer tweets that y'all have done. I hope that we can connect through this capacity. And as I watch your presentations throughout the rest of this conference, I'll make sure to connect to this hashtag to share some of the wonderful things you're doing. Also, please feel free to email me. I would love to connect. I would love to hear your story and hear your call. So on behalf of Moore County Schools, welcome. We are so happy you're here, and we're so excited to learn with you for the rest of the week. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mariah. That was wonderful. Everyone, please give Mariah some shout outs in the chat. If you can hit those reactions, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Mariah. Very inspired by Mariah and her message. And every time I hear it, it's just strikes a chord within me. I just love it. Thank you so much, Mariah. I am going to just wrap up real quick and basically just mirror what Mariah just said. I just want you guys to have fun this week. Make sure to tweet, make sure you connect with your presenters, make sure you connect with each other. One thing I do want to share, this is a network that can really have a positive impact. We have 463 educators signed up for the conference this week, 463. And that is representative of 79 counties in North Carolina. Our previous record in the last conference was 40. So 79 counties in North Carolina represented. We also have folks from Virginia, Tennessee, Wisconsin, some university representatives. So I hope you all are inspired to go out and lead that change in your buildings and in your schools. So thanks very much. Have a great week. The first sessions are going to be released shortly. And like I say, we'll follow that release schedule as we go. And have a great week. And thanks again to Mariah.